Poke the Bear is brought to you by PrizePicks and the GameTime app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 281, presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5, and are presented by GameTime. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. We are recording this Wednesday afternoon, so it's Thanksgiving Eve. It's before the Bruins play the Islanders. I'm sure I will be watching that from a bar in Framingham with a bunch of people I haven't seen in many, many years. And that is what Thanksgiving Eve is for. You were saying in Southie a couple of years ago, it gets like crazy around there, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, I feel like that's every single neighborhood, right? Where like Thanksgiving Eve, everyone's back home. You catch up with people, you settle some scores, throw back a few beers. Isn't like Thanksgiving Eve supposed to be like the drunkest day of the year in America or something like that?
I think the word, I could be wrong, it's Blackout Wednesday. That's what they call it.
That's what the kids call it.
Kids call it. I don't call it that.
Yes.
Kids call it that. So
all the kids these days shouting mustard as they're just ripping shots.
I figured out what that meant like 2 days ago. The song's actually good too.
It is, yes.
So thankfully it's a good trend. But yeah, so Thanksgiving is Thursday. Thankfully, there's a lot to talk about, so you don't have to do like, let's do a Thanksgiving sides draft. I go stuffing first.
The way the Bruins are playing right now, if we instead like railroaded this and talked about like cranberry sauce, Bruins fans who are already probably pissed at the team or would just lose it. Yeah, exactly.
It's like that Brady Kachuk picture where it's like,
I've saved that. I've saved that to use at some point. So
you have to use it. Frustrating loss on Tuesday night. That was one of those where if you're a Bruins fan, you're pulling your hair out through the whole game because they actually played. I thought the Bruins played well, and I know that people might disagree with me on that. That's okay. Bruins out high danger chance the Canucks 13-1 at 5-on-5. Could not score. Couldn't buy a goal. Credit to the Canucks goalie. Was it Lentinen? Was his name? Was that Lentinen?
Kevin Lankinen, who's like been unreal on the road this year. I think he's 8-0 on the road. So
yeah, kicking ass. So he was great. Obviously, the Bruins just again, if the Bruins came into the game 11th in goals for in the league, would be like just one of those shitty nights. This has continued. And, Charlie McAvoy mentioned after the game, at some point the dam has to break, which, like, at some point, like, isn't it going to? It has to, right? It can't not. But another frustrating loss.
Yeah, I mean, this is one, Evan, when you look at it, it's like, are you a glass half full? Oh, look at that. That was perfect timing.
Perfect.
Are you a glass half full?
I've been drinking this thing.
Yes. Half full or half empty, right? Because you look at that game and on paper where you're trying to build your game back up if you're the Bruins, I feel like you're happy with like 90% of how they played in that game. It's just the only issue is the 10% is you couldn't finish, which ends up being the most important thing. They
10% lost you the game.
Yes, exactly. And it's frustrating, right? Because you play like that against, a team like Vancouver who has a lot of talent on their team, a team that should be in the mix for a playoff spot, obviously. Like you play to that level where I think not just at 5-on-5 play, but I think at all strengths, 60 minutes, Bruins had an 18-2 edge, high danger chances. So you defend the net front. You make life difficult for a lot of the high powered forwards on Vancouver's roster. Not even counting like Quinn Hughes, who once again is a joy to watch, just how dynamic he is with the puck on his stick. But like defensively, you did the job. You were peppering the net. The Bruins had 72 total shot attempts. Like you look at all of like what we said, I think earlier this week, talking about what the Bruins had to do with under Joe Sacco. Like they checked off pretty much every box. Defended the net front, made life difficult. We're good in the neutral zone. We're breaking the puck out, making simple, smart plays, and then we're peppering the net and generating high danger chances. Like they did everything except score, which again, you can spin it as a positive, being like, hey, if they play that simple formula, they're going to be in a lot of these games. And once this absurd regression breaks through, they're going to win more of these games than not. You can look at it that way, or you can just hammer home the point that Jesus, you got 10 plus guys that are shooting historically low numbers right now. And it's frustrating, right? Because you look at where would this Bruins team be if like not saying that their power play, what would they be if they were top 5? Like, no shit, they would be a lot better. But if they were 5% better, if they were clicking at 16% as opposed to 11%, if David Pastrnak had 1 or 2 more goals than he is right now and was on a 44 goal pace than a 30 goal pace, right? Like, just all across the board, like the lack of finish is killing this team right now. And again, like, you're at least, I think, limiting the issues. Whereas when, like, you look at where they were when Montgomery was fired, and it's like, all right, they can't score. Both special teams suck. The PK's taken on water. They're giving up odd man rushes. The defense has been shitty. The goaltending's been lackluster. They're at least snuffing out some of these things, which is encouraging. But at the end of the day, you can defend the net front. You can pepper the net, all these things, which are great. And they've been better under Sacco, but ain't going to mean jack if you're not bearing these chances. They need 1 or 2 guys, at least for right now. Again, same thing as like not taking things one step at a time. You need one of Pastrnak, obviously, Zacha, Coyle, Frederick, who's killing them. Like, you need 1 or 2 of these players start bearing their chances, because otherwise, like, the team is trending, I think, in the right direction, but Bruins fans don't want to hear that when you let what should have been a pretty dominant win slip through your grasp. When, again, you look at where they are now, no longer in a playoff spot. Teams are catching up to them in terms of games in hand. Like, they got to stop piling on points here, and you can't let these kind of, again, maybe feel-good losses of how I'm kind of spinning it. Can't let that happen. Like, the margin for error, you heard it by playing like shit for the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's discouraging because, again, like, you have, as you said, you have a night last night where everyone's been clamoring for them to do, they do, and they play great defense. They limit the Canucks completely. Again, the 1 goal was a fluky bounce. Like, you can't get on them for that, and then they just can't score. I think one of my biggest takeaways, my first biggest one was, don't go away from this. Just because you couldn't score, it is 1 game. You had a number of chances. Any other night, 1 or 2 of those should go in. Don't go away from the shot volume, because they have that down and they're getting that more into their game. And I think that's a step in the right direction. I know they didn't score. I know a lot of people are angry about it, and you're right to be angry, but it is a step in the right direction. So I guess I'm more glass half full on this. The other thing is, like you said, at some point, we like to look at our analytics. We like to look at stats. Now, we're not great math guys, but typically, like, if Trent Frederick, had 12 or 13 goals, you'd expect him to cool off. Charlie Coyle had 15 goals at this point. You'd say, all right, well, at some point, that's not going to be the case anymore. I think you can do the flip side of that, where it's like, these guys are not scoring. They are not producing. So many of them aren't. At some point, like, 4 or 5 of them are going to go back to where they normally are, which is much better than they're giving now. Like, that's what should happen. That's why I tweeted, like, the dam's supposed to break, right? Like, right? and it's been a while, though. Like, that's what's concerning, is we're here at the end of November, and those guys haven't broken out yet. Brazeau has. Brazeau's given you, goals for sure. He almost had one again on Tuesday night. But, like, that's been the tough thing. And so I do think at some point, though, like, a couple of those other guys, Zacha, we'll talk Pastrnak in a bit, like, those should start to go in. And then another thing I kind of had was, I think this was sort of a classic case of, West Coast team comes to an East Coast city, gets heavily outshot, outplayed everything, and pulls out the win. That used to be you. That used to be the Bruins. Bruins used to go out west and do that. And I just wonder, like, and they weren't always the victim of that here. Like, they usually had a good counterpunch to when that happened to them here. I just wonder if the tide's shifting. And that's sort of my glass half empty look at it of, how good is this team actually? If that's, what did Vancouver have, 14 shots? I mean, it wasn't
15. Yeah.
15. Yeah, it wasn't very many.
No, sorry. 35 to 14, I think, was the actual total. That was the final shots on goal.
So again, like, that's
and again, it's one of those things where, to sound like Jake DeBrusk, who that was his go-to line, is it's one of those things. But shout out to Jake DeBrusk, who gets a goal, of course, as we all expected. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But yeah, as you said, the amount of guys that have been in such a scoring rut to start this year, like, it feels like it's inevitable some of these guys are breaking through, or else we're going to have a season where I think a lot of people are going to look at it and be like, what the hell happened? Because it's not like just one player. As you said, it's not that David Pastrnak is 40 points off of like what his career total. Like he's going off of, I think, like a 70-point pace, right? Like he's almost 40 points below where he was last year in terms of his scoring pace. You look at Charlie Coyle, who I think is on pace for 19 points after having 60. Pavel Zacha is around 20 points after having 59 points. Like there's so many guys across the board that are regressing at such a rate that you're like, is this just an absurd outlier season if it follows through like this? Because like you can look at the math, you can look at the underlying numbers. That drop off it's even hard to explain just how many guys. And you can look at the roster and be like, oh, they got a lot of bottom six guys. What do you expect? Like that is part of it, but like this drop off shouldn't happen to this degree. It's insane.
That's where I agree with, and that's where like we'll get comments and we'll hear people say, oh, but the roster sucks. It doesn't suck this bad. It doesn't suck to the point where, Elias Lindholm has 10 points in 23 games. Cole Koepke with his 8 points is still top 5 on this team. McAvoy 7 points, Zacha 7 points. Hampus Lindholm hasn't played in 3 weeks and he still is near the top. Frederick has 6 points. He's a minus 11. Charlie Coyle, 5 points, minus 10. Coyle's supposed to be a shutdown guy. Patrick's out, but Geeky, 4 points. Again, like you're getting nothing from those guys. Nothing. And, even like 2 of Frederick's goals were in one game they lost. So it's, again, it keeps going back to like, you're not getting it, but you did the right thing. On Tuesday night, you played the right way. You threw everything at the net. You got chances. You crashed the net. At some point, like those have to start going in, and they have not had a 5-on-5 goal. And what is it, like 244 minutes?
I'm trying to think of what I know. I mean, the most striking one is they haven't scored a goal in the third period at the Garden since their home opener, which is insane. They've not scored a goal in the third period on Causeway Street since October 10th.
Boston Sports Info. This is getting crazy. Have now gone 244 minutes at home without consecutive minutes at home without scoring a goal in the third period. That is 12 plus games for those who want to do the math. And the Bees have just one third period goal at home the entire season. Outscored 11-1 in the third period and outshot 120 to 85. Yeah, I don't know what's again. That's where you throw your hands up and it's like
it's breaking my brain, Evan.
And that's where again, like people are going to say, well, the roster sucks. No roster sucks this bad where everybody across the board is completely regressed. Like, what is happening? There's something deeper at play here.
I think the middle ground, right, is like this roster is a lot more flawed than probably we all expected, but they should not be this friggin' bad. That should be, I think, the stance.
Correct. That's the rational stance. Everyone's going to adopt that. You got to believe what we're saying, okay? You got to take that in. On a lighter note, PrizePicks. It's PrizePicks time. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. We'll keep it Bruins related. I can't confidently tell you to take more goals for David Pastrnak or more points for Marchand or McAvoy. Maybe you want to keep riding this and go less, or you could say, you know what, Tuesday was sort of, a lot of shots. You listen to what we're saying of, hey, at some point those are going to go in, and you take a chance. It's up to you, but it doesn't matter because sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. I can't sit here and say, hey, David Pastrnak,
hat trick incoming.
Yeah, he's got it. Jeremy Swayman more saves easily. I did take Jeremy Swayman more saves against Vancouver, and it wasn't even Jeremy Swayman's fault. He got 14 shots on him, so I think the number was at 25. So, not my best, but We'll rebound. We'll rebound this Wednesday night. I'm sure
That's the spirit.
when I'm out, I will play some, pick some more or less for sure. Speaking of Pastrnak, this has been a recurring issue. I think he had like 8 points in 8 games. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I thought I saw that on the broadcast, but looked really shaky against Detroit on Saturday night, and same thing on Tuesday against Vancouver. He needs a breakout game, arguably more than anybody. Like, you need a good hat trick from him one night, a night where he looks confident, the puck's going in. He had a breakaway against, I think it was in the second period against Vancouver, and Lankinen made the save. So, like, there are chances, but he's not finishing and just shaky at the moment.
You talk about like a seemingly meaningless goal, but man, that empty netter getting called off on Thursday against Utah, like that would have made the world of difference for him to probably see the puck go into the net. Again, it's an empty net, but right now, I think for him, it's just the confidence just isn't there. And this is a guy that has the resume, has the skills, everything that you want out of your superstar, playmaker, goal scorer, and it just hasn't been there. And again, this is not to say that the Bruins, like, we need you to score a hat trick a game or anything like that. But just the lack of finish right now is so puzzling. And again, it's also a byproduct of the fact that so many other guys are aggressing that, yeah, no shit. Like, defenses are going to be like, we don't need to key on any of these guys. Like, these guys can't even hit the side of a bond right now, the way they're shooting the puck. So let's key in on like the one guy that we know can burn us, even if like there's not a shooting lane in front of him. Throw bodies there. He's already, you move him off the puck a little bit. He's just fighting it right now. Like, I think that's probably the best way to put it. I'm not looking at, injuries or anything like that. It's just confidence, and that's what's kind of hampering him right now. And you look at just how much this team relies on David Pastrnak, and we've seen it countless times where there's been stretches in the year where the Bruins, especially early on in seasons, have taken some time to get rolling on offense, but who's been there bailing them out? It's David Pastrnak, who has 12 points in the first 8 games or something that keeps them afloat as more guys kind of find their stride. You're getting none of that right now. And I think this is a time where, especially you look at the schedule being lighter, where you're hoping that this is a 15 points in 7 games stretch from Pastrnak. You're just not getting any of that right now. And I know he's getting a few assists, but David Pastrnak is your best player, your highest paid player, because of his ability to put the puck in the net. You're just not. You need more of that right now. As you said, even a hat trick, you need a 2-goal game for him. That's what this is what you need right now. It's just someone. And again, as I said earlier, if David Pastrnak has 2 or 3 more goals than he has right now, not that has 20 goals in 24 games, whatever. How much different the overall outlook of this team would be. The margins for error are so slim right now, but the way they're playing defensively, Boston, is another goal or 2 here and there would make the world of a difference right now. And it's frustrating is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned sort of the way they're playing defensively, and I think, teams, you're playing great defense, you're not scoring enough offensively, and guys on D are starting to be like, all right, you know what, we need to cheat a little bit. We need to take some more chances, and then goals start going in your own net more than goals going in the other net. And I think that's what you want to avoid. I mean, again, Pastrnak has not scored a goal since November 14th at Dallas. That was that beauty of a game. 7-2, only 2 goals in the month of November, and it was back-to-back. He'd scored a goal and an assist against the Blues the game before. So I agree with you. I mean, it's puzzling. I know he dealt with injuries throughout the offseason, and that hampers your start. But his first month wasn't even that bad. 6 goals, 10 points in the first month. Not a banner month, but still not bad. You'll take that. And even last year, he was way more of a setup guy, but he still scored a lot,
right?
And he led to a bunch of goals. This year, it just hasn't been the case. And if you had Marchand, Bergeron, Krejci like the old days, oh, okay, no worries, you got other guys who can score. No one else is scoring right now, so Pastrnak stuff gets completely magnified. And it's true. His play in the corners isn't the same. He's making puzzling decisions in front of the net with the puck that normally it's just shoot the thing. I see a lot on the power play of him just kind of drifting back towards the boards just to get the one-timer off. And it's that's also not it. I don't know what the thinking is there. Judd Surratt said he hit the crossbar last night, and I couldn't tell because I'm at home and my parents' TV is like tiny, so I couldn't see from the couch. But like drifting on power plays and stuff. So again, I don't know what needs to change there. Getting in his head, as you said, a 2-goal game, a really nice like a game winner, an overtime would be cool. Like, there's lots of different things there, and you just haven't seen it, and it's been sort of but it's really only the tip of the iceberg with their scoring troubles. So
yeah. And again, you look at even that comeback against the Blues where Pastrnak has that goal. You thought that was going to be the jumping off point, and he did score the next game, as you said, didn't matter all that much in that game against the Stars, but. You desperately need him to lead the way right now, because if so many of these other guys are shooting way below their averages, you gotta, it's like in basketball, you gotta give the rock to your star and have him kind of lead the way. And right now you're just not getting any of that. And you hope that if he can keep you afloat, then again, you're not expecting it to be like the friggin' portal scene from Avengers where everyone starts scoring in bunches after that. But if you get him going and then just one more guy starts clicking, whether that's Zaka or Lindholm or anyone, go down the list of how many guys need to break through. But even if one or two more guys start pulling on the rope there, you're at least putting yourself in a better spot to steadily get points. Like, again, same as that game against Vancouver. You play that style of game, you're going to win a lot more of those games if you generate any sort of offense. So that's why it's so frustrating.
It's going to be funny because this will release and the Bruins will score like 8 goals.
7 goals against or they won't. They'll lose 7-0. And people are like, wow, this team does just suck, huh?
It's just terrible. Well, if you want to go, not tonight. The game's, I can't imagine if you're... we were doing Haggs and I were doing a podcast, I think it was Saturday, and they were playing Saturday night in Detroit. And we recorded it at like 2:30. And Haggs is like, yeah, if you want to go to the game tonight. I'm like, Haggs, like, what? What are you doing? Maybe they get, maybe they're in the area. A lot of people listen to Pucks with Haggs in Detroit. You never know.
True.
But game time, nothing like watching an NBA or an NHL game live. Energy in the building, sounds on the ice, the court, the memories you make with family, friends, and other fans. It's unmatched. And the coolest part to me, strangers sitting around you become your best friends. Or, Connor, as you say, maybe they become your enemies. You can make these memories with GameTime. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff. We hate the fluff. To show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. When I use GameTime, I also love the flash deals, which help me get discounted prices on really good seats. Plus, who doesn't love seat views, which give a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy? So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Connor, what time is it?
Game time.
It's game time, as Bane would say. It is. Yes. It is game time.
Oh, yes.
You do a good Bane.
Let me see the seat views.
Let me make sure I'm not in front of a pole.
I can't see shit from up here.
Yeah, it'd be great.
I'll show you where I've made my home in section 318.
I'm yelling, shoot!
Yes.
Anywho, we are going off
if
the rails.
If the Bruins are out of the playoffs by March, we can do an entire episode. We just do it in the Bane voice. So.
Yes. We just got to do impressions the entire time.
They should have traded for Kreider, brother.
I think that'd be good. I think people. Yes. I'll wear my cowboy hat too. So
yes, exactly.
We'll get the whole thing. I don't know what we would do.
This is what's at stake if the Bruins fall out of the actually don't make the playoffs.
Make the playoffs, great. If they don't, even better. It's funny. We've never had to do podcasts with them, not even making the playoffs, let alone being eliminated early. So if we have to handle that this year, we might just quit. It's done.
This is what's at stake.
I'm out. Goodbye. Speaking of the playoffs, Games like Tuesday, when you can't score, continually obviously amplify your issue, which is you can't score. And it begs the question, should they make a trade? Should they be in the trading market for someone, as we talked about on Bruins Beat, like a Chris Kreider? Should they get creative and go after someone that we're not maybe looking at who can bolster their scoring? Or do you just keep rolling with this team, see where you are in a month, and go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting to the point where you have to start evaluating your options. And I think for Don Sweeney and the Bruins front office, it becomes a point where how much of it do you roll with the punches, or how much of it do you, again, want to mortgage something to help this team? And again, maybe you want to spin it that you get a guy that helps you the next couple of years, and that's what justify the means. But do you want to trade a first round pick right now? I don't think you do, right? Like,
no, you know,
that is one of those things.
Please don't trade a first round pick.
So, but I do think you're getting to the point where you have to do something to shake things up. And as you said, we've already talked about the Kreider thing, but like if that's a trade where, you know, you mentioned Hampus Lindholm. I know people have mentioned like Brennan Kahlo. Like you put Kahlo with like a Frederick, that's a pretty sizable shakeup, right? Like there's moves like that can kind of, one, get the message across that guys need to pull their weight, while also addressing a need on the team. So, you know, I'm sure Kreider's not the only intriguing guy we're going to talk about. Every year there's more guys that pop up that make a lot of sense, that get dangled out on the market. So I think right now it's holding court and seeing if this way they're playing under Sacco leads to more guys breaking through. But if this carries on for another week or two, I think you do have to look at more drastic measures, just because points are at a premium. You're at the softest part of your schedule right now, and if you're not getting points, you're in a bad spot.
So this is my thing. Like, I think what they end up doing is they're going to wait to see how this roster does under Sacco and if they can actually start scoring before making some sort of size move. And there's also talk out of New York that the Kreider stuff was sort of just smoke to try to get those guys going. I mean, you know, again, who knows?
Bold move
to dangle a veteran leader out like that. Thinking about like the whole, like we talked about it on Monday. Do you trade like a Hampus Lindholm, or do you trade a Brandon Carlo? And I hate the idea of it, because your identity is defense. That's clear. I think that's one of the clearest things over the last, since Joe Sacco took over the last 3 games. Your identity is going to be defense. If you're going to beat teams, it's going to be 3-1. It's going to be 2-0. Like, it's going to be good D, smart plays, chipping pucks, like all that stuff. And if you just did like a Lindholm for Kreider 1-for-1, sure, you're getting better up front, hitting back. And now you can make the case, well, they don't have Hampus Lindholm right now, but you can also make the case of, think of how much better they would be if Hampus Lindholm was in the lineup. And so, like, that's where I'm hesitant. And even, like, again, like a Pavel Zacha, you deal, like, you know, do you deal Pavel Zacha and something else for, let's just hypothetically say, Chris Kreider?
Yeah.
Well, that's like, Kreider's got 6 or 7 years on Pavel Zacha. Pavel Zacha is Pasternak's guy. And if you bring Kreider in, it's an upgrade over Zacha. But is it enough of an upgrade to justify potentially pissing off David Pastrnak and having a guy that can play center, who, right, Zacha's your number 1 center right now. So I just don't, that's where, like, I don't know if there's a roster move that makes perfect sense. And again, we'll see. I mean, again, if you can package Trent Frederick and a prospect or something and get an upgrade for scoring, then great. But if it's a true roster guy, like I was talking to Molly Walker. We love Molly, New York Post, and covers for the New York Post. UMass gal. Yep. I was talking to her, and I was like, "There's no way the Rangers would want like picks, right?" She's like, "No, they would want a roster player if they were to make that move." And that's what we were talking about. Of like, there's no way the Rangers are going to be like, "All right, we're going to recoup a bunch of assets to a cup contender."
Yeah. So
that's my thing. Like, do you want to subtract from the defense to help the offense? I don't know.
That's why it's so frustrating too, right? Where like, again, like, I feel like the middle ground is you don't want to give up premiums to get a guy like Kreider, who is a former 50 goal scorer, at the very least a 30 goal scorer. Like, how much would this team just be better with a 20 goal guy, right? And it's why, again, we keep on harping back to the offseason as like, if you just carved out $4 or $5 million for a Toffoli, who's been great for San Jose, Duclair's, who we always mention, I know is injured, but is like a sure bet to be a 20 goal kind of guy. Like, again, what we can price segue into is like a guy like Jake DeBrusk. Like, you're missing one of those guys that, like, Kreider would help your team, but like the Bruins don't need to swing for the fences necessarily right now. Like, if they just got a guy, like a Marcus Johansson level type player, right? A guy like 15 to 20 goals.
You're right.
Like, how run with the team be? That's why it's so frustrating.
We said this about like Kyle Palmieri 2 or 3 years ago. Like, we just go get a guy. And I think that's one of the things when we look back at the offseason, Lindholm we all agreed on. I still don't regret that yet for the Bruins, but like Zadorov is the interesting one where it's like you shelled out, I think was it $5 or $6 million per?
6 million, 6 years, $5 million per year.
$5 million. Could you have finagled the money to get like a Brendan Dillon and like a Duclair or a Tyler Toffoli? Like, we were saying all offseason, like, you don't need this high-end defenseman. You just need a veteran guy who can play in the top four if Mason Lowry can't. And, you can alternate back and forth and go get a guy that can, give you some middle six scoring, who's more reliable than sort of the guys that you have. And it hasn't been the case. It has not been the case. But it's like golden hour where I am. Look at that. I mean, that is like
getting
prime.
blinded, yeah.
I am. I look like Two-Face right now. Anyway, Jake DeBrusk scores against former team. Most obvious thing ever.
Could have seen that coming. Happen. Yeah.
Easily could have seen that happening. He got his Oreos before the game. You see that?
I did. Some things never change.
Yeah, no, he was not passing up his Oreos. But it begs the question, should they have re-signed Jake DeBrusk? I love the people pissed off at the tribute videos, by the way, yesterday of Heinen and Jake DeBrusk. I thought it was the funniest thing.
I have no comment on those people who are commenting on things, but
so good.
But no, like, I think for DeBrusk, right, it comes down to, I think, what the contract was going to be, and I feel like at the time we got to the offseason, I felt like everyone both parties knew that it was time for a clean break there, but when I think look at his skill set, yeah, you sure miss it, right? And this is why, like, DeBrusk, as frustrating as he was at times in terms of his scoring, his up and down play and everything like that, and just the peaks and valleys with his outright, baseline production. He's a guy that became a pretty valuable piece for this team in terms of, like, he was always moving his feet, always around grade A ice, and became a pretty reliable player in terms of, power play reps, PK reps especially. He really became a valuable player there. And you look at the way the Bruins are playing now, where they're kind of a more simplified net front, getting tips, rebounds. A guy like DeBrusk fits that pretty well, right? So that's why it's, again, like, I feel like both parties were ready to move on once they got to the offseason, but man, you kind of miss him right now in terms of just what his skill set is and how he could, again, even if he's not ever going to be the 30-goal guy that he always showed that promise, Bruins sure are missing a guy that you can pencil in for 20 goals, 25 goals if he stays healthy. Like, and that's kind of what he is, and you're missing that right now.
And just the pace he plays with.
Yeah.
Like, just hard on forechecks, chipping pucks in, like.
That's why he's always good in the playoffs. Like, when ice is at a premium and space to operate, the guys that can move their feet generally are the ones that do well. Look at, like, I watched on Vancouver yesterday, Conor Ryan, who has been rumored as a trade candidate, and, like, people are like, oh, he's from Scituate? Yeah, he's 5'8"? Fuck no. Watch how he plays and tell me if you think that guy's 5'8". The guy hustles all over the ice, drives to the net, is a gamer. And that's why it feels like he's a guy that every time you watch in the playoffs, he's a guy that makes plays. Same with DeBrusk. Guys that move their feet are not afraid to drive to the net. Those are the guys that break through in the playoffs, and you're missing that right now.
Garland is so fun to watch.
He's a great player.
Perfect.
He's an
Bruin
awesome player.
It would have been a perfect Bruin, and it just never materialized. So again, depressing times. I mean, they almost, if they scored a goal, they would have, or two, they would have had a 3-game win.
It feels so much better. You feel so much better. Even if they got a point out of that, even if they got a point out of the game, you're like, all right, like, not great, but still in the right direction. Now people are, I think, are taking a step back, but it just shows you just what the margin for error is right now, and you don't have any of it. And it's frustrating because the team is, I think, the overall product is so much better from what it was a week ago, where you're like, what the fuck, what is going on right now? Like, they just looked like a shell of themselves. They're adhering more to, I think, the identity they need to play, but again, it means jack if you're not cashing in on these looks. That's why it feels like you could say all the right things, but Bruins fans can still look at the record, and it's tough to argue with that, right?
I'll end on a high note. Playing better defense. They're playing way better defense, and I think that's a step in the right direction. I think they are going in the right direction. Am I saying they're going to be cup contenders? No, but I do think they have made strides in their game over the last 3 games that show that this is going to be a team that's in the mix. Now, how in the mix? Like we talk about trades, I'm not mortgaging like any of my future for this team.
Yeah.
Like this should be this roster, and you see what you get, and you see what you get out of it, and if they're in the playoff spot, if they're not, if they're out of the playoffs, then you got to make tough decisions with guys on the roster. Frederick, Geeky, goodbye. You get more into that stuff, but we will save that for another day. Connor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe?
Yeah, you can read all of my stuff over there at the Globe and Boston.com. You have covered every step of the way with recaps, features, columns, breakdowns. So please read all my stuff over on those 2 sites. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all of that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Poke the Bear listeners, have a very happy Thanksgiving.